Welcome to the deep dive. Ready for a deep dive into some fascinating research and a YouTube video that's got us scratching our heads?
It's a real head scratcher.
It is. So it all centers around Professor Jackie Ying. Now, she's this incredible scientist, a nanotechnologist, but get this, she's drawn to an ancient religious text.
Okay, I'm intrigued. A scientist and an ancient religious text. That's not a combo you see every day.
No, not at all. And that's what we're here to figure out. Why? What led her down this path?
Yeah, what's the connection?
Exactly. We've got the clues, right? We've got her background, her scientific journey, and this one pivotal verse that seems to bridge science and faith.
A bridge between science and faith. Now that's a deep dive I'm ready for.
Me too. So our mission today is to follow Professor Ying's path, to understand not just what she found, but why it resonated so deeply with her.
We need to get into her head, understand her motivations.
Yes. Let's rewind to Professor Ying's early years for a minute. Growing up in Taiwan, she was this incredibly bright kid, always asking those big "why are we here" questions.
Oh, I know those kids, the ones who just won't stop asking why.
Oh, yeah. And her family was Christian, but then they moved to Singapore and then to New York, so she was exposed to a lot of different cultures and ideas.
Ah, so melting pot of influences. That must have shaped her worldview.
Absolutely. And alongside this diverse upbringing, she had rigorous scientific training. So she was comfortable with both the concrete world of science and those big existential questions.
She was almost primed for this kind of journey, huh? Constantly seeking, questioning, never satisfied with easy answers.
That's Professor Ying in a nutshell. And being the thorough scientist that she is, she didn't just settle for one answer. Oh no. She delved into different religious texts, comparing and contrasting them.
Like a grand experiment of faith.
Exactly. And during this exploration, she stumbled upon a specific verse in the Quran. And this verse, well, it became a turning point in her life.
Okay, so what was this mysterious verse?
Well, it reads, "Do the disbelievers not realize that the heavens and the earth were once joined together, then we split them apart? And we created from water every living thing. Will they not then believe?"
Water as the source of all life. That's a pretty bold statement, especially for a text written way back in the 7th century.
It is. And you know, modern science has had to work incredibly hard to confirm water's fundamental role in all life. Think about it. Being a scientist, centuries later, reading this ancient text that seems to foreshadow a groundbreaking discovery, it's mind-blowing.
It's like finding a blueprint to a machine that wouldn't be invented for another 1,000 years.
Exactly. I mean, we all know water is important. We drink it, we bathe in it. But to say it's the very source of all life, that's another level.
That's creation. So how did they know?
Right. How?
Well, we've learned a lot since the 7th century. Modern research has shown that water isn't just some passive ingredient in life. It makes up a significant percentage of living organisms, up to 90% in some.
Wow, 90%. We're practically walking water balloons.
Practically. Even humans are about 60% water. It's in every cell, every tissue.
Okay, I get that we're mostly water, but there's a difference between needing it and being created from it, right?
Right. And that's where the science gets really fascinating. Water isn't just filler, it's the stage, the solvent, where all the chemical reactions that define life occur. It transports nutrients, removes waste, regulates temperature. It's the medium in which life's symphony plays out.
Water, the conductor of life's orchestra. And there's this research from 1945 by Mitchell and colleagues. They break down the water content of different organs, and it's amazing. The brain and heart are 73% water, lungs are 83%.
Wow, that's a lot of water.
Even bones, which we think of as dry, are 31% water. So it really paints a vivid picture, like water's woven into the very fabric of our being. You can imagine how this verse must have struck Professor Ying, this brilliant scientist encountering an ancient text that seems to hold a deep understanding of the natural world. It begs the question, how could they have known?
It's a question that probably sent her on this whole journey in the first place.
Exactly. So we've got the setup. A scientist trained to question everything, an ancient text that predates modern science, and this one verse that aligns surprisingly well with our modern understanding of biology. But what was it about this specific passage that sparked Professor Ying's journey of faith? Was it just the scientific accuracy, or was it something more?
Good question. Something to think about.
Definitely. That's what we'll dig into next. Stay with us.
I don't think it was just the fact about water, being the source of life. I think there was something else there that resonated with Professor Ying. Remember, she was comparing different religious texts.
So maybe it was how the Quran presented this knowledge, like the style, the framing of it.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like a scientific textbook or a research paper. The Quran uses a different kind of language.
It was more poetic.
Yeah, poetic. It talks about creation, the origins of life, in a way that's almost awe-inspiring, you know what I mean? And maybe that resonated with her on a deeper level as a scientist who appreciates elegance and simplicity.
It's like it spoke to her heart as well as her head.
Exactly.
And it's interesting how this one verse could be so powerful for her, while other people, they could have all the data in the world and still not be convinced.
It's all about interpretation, isn't it?
Hmm.
Two people can look at the same evidence, even scientific evidence, and come to completely different conclusions.
So it's more than just the facts.
It's about beliefs, worldviews, personal experiences. It's like we're all wearing these invisible glasses that filter the information we receive.
And shape our perceptions of the world.
Exactly. So in Professor Ying's case, her scientific background, her upbringing, her exposure to diverse cultures, all of that play a role in how she interpreted this verse.
It was all part of her unique journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It wasn't a simple equation of evidence equals belief. There's a human element there, a personal journey. And Professor Ying, she grappled with these ideas. She weighed the evidence, looked at it through the lens of her own experiences. And ultimately, she came to the conclusion that this knowledge in the Quran, couldn't have just come from human observation way back then. There had to be something more to it, a divine source.
So a scientist driven by logic and evidence embraces Islam at the age of 35. It's a pretty powerful story.
It is. And here's the twist. It didn't lead her away from science.
In fact, she says it deepened her connection to it.
Right. It challenges this idea that science and religion are at odds with each other, like they're two separate worlds.
When maybe they can coexist, even complement each other.
That's definitely something to think about.
So we've followed Professor Ying's journey to this point, her upbringing, her scientific curiosity, her encounter with the Quran, her conversion. But what does it all mean for us? What's the takeaway here?
Well, I think there are a few key takeaways. First, embrace your curiosity. Don't be afraid to ask the big questions. Professor Ying, she didn't just accept the status quo. She was always searching, exploring, questioning everything.
Don't just take things at face value, right?
Right. Dig deeper, challenge assumptions, even your own.
It's all about pushing those boundaries.
And secondly, be open to finding answers in unexpected places. Don't limit yourself to just one field of study or one perspective. Be willing to explore different ideas, different cultures, different ways of thinking.
It's like don't judge a book by its cover.
Exactly. You never know what you might find if you just look beyond the surface.
And be humble, right?
Yes. Intellectual humility is so important. Recognize that we don't have all the answers. Our understanding is always evolving. There's always more to learn.
Be open to new ideas, admit when you're wrong, and always be on the lookout for new perspectives. That's great advice.
It is, and I think Professor Ying's story really embodies that.
So we've talked about her journey, the science behind that verse that sparked her faith. But there's one big question we haven't really tackled head on. The relationship between science and faith. Are they inherently at odds? Can they coexist?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is, and that's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. This whole idea that science and faith are at war, we've been circling it all episode, haven't we? But Professor Ying's story, it kind of suggests something different, maybe even a harmony or even like a partnership.
Yeah, it definitely challenges the usual story we hear.
Yeah.
We're always presented with this science or faith, like it's got to be one or the other.
Like we have to pick a side.
Right. When it's more nuanced than that, it could be science, AD, faith.
Okay, so how do you see these two working together then? Like practically?
Well, science, right? It's all about evidence.
Yeah.
Rigorous testing. It helps us understand the physical world, the nuts and bolts of how things work.
The how and the why of the universe.
Exactly. It's like a powerful microscope, helping us examine the tiny little details of the cosmos.
Okay, I can see that. And then faith, that's more about the big existential questions, right? Like, why are we here? What's the meaning of life? What are our values?
Yeah, the deeper questions, the stuff beyond the reach of microscopes. Faith kind of provides a framework for understanding our place in the grand scheme of things, our purpose, morality, all that.
So it's not about picking science or faith, but recognizing that they offer different, but like you said, maybe complementary ways of understanding the world.
Right. Maybe instead of being at odds, they could actually be partners in our search for knowledge.
I like that, partners. So imagine a world where science and faith are working together in harmony.
Oh yeah, a world where scientific discoveries make us even more awestruck by creation, and where spiritual insights guide us in how we use that knowledge ethically.
So science pushes us forward, and faith makes sure we're on the right track.
Exactly. It's like this dance between the head and the heart.
And Professor Ying's story, it's like a perfect example of this. Her science led her to a deeper spiritual understanding, and now her faith informs her scientific research.
It shows us that our minds can embrace both the rational and the transcendent, the empirical, and the spiritual. We don't got to choose.
We can have both. It's not an either situation.
It's a both hand.
I love that. It's been quite a journey, this whole deep dive, hasn't it? We started with a scientist and an ancient text and ended up exploring the very nature of knowledge, belief, and the connection between science and faith.
We went deep. I hope it sparked some curiosity in our listeners, too.
Me too. And remember, the search for knowledge, it never really ends. So keep questioning, keep exploring, and be open to all the possibilities. You never know what incredible discoveries are waiting for you on your own personal deep dive. Thanks for joining us.